US President Donald Trump is due to meet Syria's new leader, Ahmad al-Sharaa, at a meeting of Gulf nations being hosted by Saudi Arabia. President Trump, who's in Riyadh on the first leg of a trip to Gulf countries, said on Tuesday that the US would be lifting all of its sanctions on Syria. That announcement triggered an outpouring of celebration on the streets of Damascus. Syria desperately needs foreign assistance to help rebuild after more than a decade of civil war. While in Riyadh, Trump secured a $600 billion commitment from Saudi Arabia to invest in the United States, including a weapons sale worth nearly $142 billion. The Trump administration is calling it the largest arms sales deal in US history.
Donald Trump wants to make history in the Middle East. His predecessor, Joe Biden, tried to finalize a defense pact with Riyadh in a bid to normalize Saudi ties with Israel. But now Trump hopes they'll do just that in their own time, as he announced what the White House is calling a historic arms deal. Saudi Arabia is already the largest customer for American weapons, but this could really advance the kingdom's military might.
Our fighter jets, our missiles, our systems, Patriots, everything. We have the best of weapons. And beyond that, you're purchasing planes, you're purchasing a lot of different things, and I appreciate it.
But waging war is nothing these days without top-class AI capabilities. And Trump brought along the best in the tech business with him to provide Riyadh with the chips it needs for processing power and the know-how for setting up data centers. Later in the day, Trump toured an exhibit at a U.S.-Saudi investment forum.
That's pretty amazing, right? Are we doing a good job so far for America?
Speaking at the forum, the Saudi crown prince praised his kingdom's close ties with the United States.
What we have signed today is part of a larger ambition, investing in opportunities for cooperation and mutual benefit. Mr. President, our common work goes beyond economic cooperation and extends to bringing security and peace to the region and the world.
Trump's remarks included an offer to strike a new deal with Iran, but only if its leaders changed course.
All right, let's bring in Daniel Gerlach, a Middle East expert and the editor-in-chief of the German Middle East magazine Zenith. Welcome, Daniel. Trump says he's lifting sanctions on Syria. Why now? What do you see his motive as being?
Well, I think Saudi Arabia and Qatar in particular, maybe also the United Arab Emirates, urged him to do that. These countries are willing to invest in Syria and stabilize it, and they are, as far as Saudi Arabia and Qatar are concerned, on fairly good terms with the new regime in Damascus. And therefore, if they want to support the Syria and if they want to bring investment to Syria, they need the sanctions relief, because we've seen the UK and other countries lifting their sanctions. But of course, the banking sector depends very much on the American willingness, because America, like bluntly said, controls the finance sector worldwide. And banks who want to do business in America need to make sure they don't do business with the wrong people. So they would wait for sanctions relief. And this was the main request. And the government of President Ahmad al-Sharaa was willing to do everything to make sure this happens.
Does this signal a wider US reset in the region, would you say?
Well, that's what you can call it. But in fact, of course, there's a lot of spectacular events happening and a lot of spectacular rhetoric. But if you look at it carefully, the approach of Trump to the Middle East is not that much different from his predecessors and others, to invest in this alliance with the wealthy Arab Gulf states on the Arabian Peninsula has been a continuity in American policy. We don't know exactly what's going to happen to the US troops that are still present in the northeast of Syria. There's some dealings going on with President Erdogan of Turkey, the self-declared dissolution of the PKK. So there's a lot of dynamics happening, and it could be that the Americans would withdraw from the northeast. On the other hand, I'm not so sure that's going to happen anytime soon. So I would also look at the continuity with regard to Israel. America has been very supportive of, or at least not critical of, Israeli action in Syria. And we see that the government of al-Sharaa did not was rather complacent, if not indifferent, to this Israeli strikes and Israeli military activities in Syria. And I believe it did so not only because it is weak and it knows it cannot confront Israel, but also because it wanted to assuage Donald Trump and tell the Gulf states and the Americans, look, we are not an enemy of Israel. We might even be willing one day to join the Abraham Accords. And that's why we are no danger to Israel and you can relieve sanctions. Which is quite an irony given the fact that Mr. al-Sharaa a few months ago was the leader of an Islamist jihadist group in the Middle East. So we see interesting dynamics, but I won't see so much like difference or disruption of previous US policies if you look carefully.
If we can continue talking about Israel, do you see this visit then shifting the regional balance in terms of US-Israeli relations or not?
No, I don't see a shifting of the balance, but we will see what's going to come out of these, as Trump said, the greatest arms deal in US history. I think it's volume-wise probably the greatest arms deal in world history ever. But let's not forget that these are just, as you said, Anya, commitments. These are not signed contracts. We'll see what comes out of that. If there is really, if these are implemented, then we would have to ask ourselves the question, if Saudi Arabia and probably other Gulf states are going to obtain military equipment that is superior to what they have received before and that is equal to Israel's military equipment. There's something in US policy, foreign policy, which is called the qualitative military edge, which is a logic according to which America would never deliver any more sophisticated weapons to other countries in the Middle East than to Israel to make sure Israel has always the upper hand. Now, what we see going on here with Saudi Arabia is that it seems that Trump is not so much caring about this principle of US Middle East policy, the qualitative military edge, and that could concern Israel. We see that the Gulf states, of course, not acting hostile to Israel, and even Saudi Arabia has indicated it is willing to make peace with Israel if the Israeli government changes its behavior on Palestine. But let's not forget an increase of arms, let's say, military supplies to the Gulf states could also one day turn against Israel. And that is something the Israeli strategists certainly have in mind.
Middle East expert Daniel Gerlach. Daniel, as ever, thank you so much.
Thank you.